Wait a minute, that's not right. The man comes around again. Two new champs defend their titles, and Cody's challenger is phenomenal. And we hand out some attitude adjustments to some alphas. Okay, and the news. And the news indeed, as we have a new women's world champion. 1 week after Rhea Ripley had to vacate the title, we had a 14-woman battle royal for the women's world championship, and we had every single woman on the Raw roster participate, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. But for now, let's quickly get to the highlights. Early on, Maxine Dupree, who had a tough night earlier in the night, she got a little bit of redemption as she had two quick eliminations of her biggest rivals, Indy Hartwell and Candice LeRae. Now, Piper Niven was upset when she was eliminated by Becky, so she grabbed Becky under the bottom rope and threw her into the steel steps and then landed a cannonball up against those steps. Nia Jax took advantage upon seeing this, and she used Piper as a prop to chokeslam Becky and then Samoan drop her onto the table where Becky was still lying. Now, at some point during the commercial break, Nia was not yet done, and she slammed Becky through the table, causing it to break. And Becky was out for most of the rest of the match. Nia led the match in eliminations with 4, including Zoe Stark and Shayna Baszler in quick succession to get the match down to just 3 participants. At this point, Becky finally rolled back into the ring, but still looked awfully worn out. Becky and Liv teamed up to stop Nia from landing an Annihilator, and then they both hit big moves and got Nia to fall outside of the ring to get it down to just 2. They battled one-on-one for a few moments and then found both of themselves on the apron, where they precariously battled each other for an entire minute until finally Becky hit a manhandle slam, which caused Liv to roll off the apron and make Becky the new women's world champion. Now, this would be Becky's 7th world championship, including Raw championships and SmackDown women's championships on the main roster. For Liv, this is yet another second place finish in a multi-person singles match, going all the way back to 2023 in 4 of 5 big matches, 2 Royal Rumbles, 2 Elimination Chambers, and tonight she has come up in 2nd place. Unfortunately, she's now dropped to 1-6 overall since returning from her injury, and so with the way that she handled Rhea a couple weeks ago, I think it's safe yet again we need to keep her away from the title. Now, for the other 12 competitors, they all picked up a singles loss in this match, so it doesn't seem like anyone is who's next. So let's hope that Raquel can return very quickly and get back into action so she can be the top contender, or we should just wait until after the draft before we find a suitable new contender for Becky. Earlier in the night, we had another championship match when the Awesome Truth defended their titles for the first time since gaining the championship at WrestleMania, where they battled last week's #1 contender winner, DIY. Now, early on, it was a very even match, and both teams showed good sportsmanship since they had pretty much been friends with each other for the last several months. However, later on, DIY looked to win when Truth was hit by a super kick, a pedigree, and a meet in the middle. But The Miz was able to pull Ciampa out underneath the bottom rope, which allowed the Awesome Truth to hit Ciampa with a truth-crushing finale to retain. For the Awesome Truth, this was their first title defense, and they are now 4-1 since reforming earlier in the year. For DIY, this is their 3rd loss in a title match this year. And it showed as Ciampa let out his frustration by refusing to shake their opponent's hands after the match. Unfortunately, they will now need to move down the contenders list. We had a couple other tag matches as well. First, between the New Day and Imperium. Now, we've seen these teams battle several times over the last few months, and this one came about when the New Day interrupted Gunther, saying that he was going to go after the King of the Ring next month in Saudi Arabia. And Woods came out and said that Gunther needed to be reminded that Woods is the current King of the Ring, and that he would also be re-entering the tournament. Once we finally got to the tag team match, even with Imperium controlling most of the time, the New Day was able to find a way to land an up-up, down-down to get the win. For New Day, they improved to 5-3, 1-1 since traditional tag matches since last year's SummerSlam. Again, they seem to be much better when it's a traditional tag match. For Imperium, they dropped to 1-5-1 in 2024, and Gunther and Kaiser apparently had enough of Vinci holding them down as Kaiser turned on Vinci with a brutal attack, which ended with Kaiser drop-kicking Vinci's head onto the steel steps. As Kaiser left the ring, Gunther laughed and smiled in approval, so apparently the two of them were in it together. We also saw one other tag match featuring two brand new pairings. First, Ricochet and Andrade took on JD McDonough and Santos Escobar. Now, when Raw started, we saw that Dominic Mysterio had his arm in a sling, so he was not medically cleared to wrestle. He had called up Santos and asked him to return the favor for Dom tagging with him at WrestleMania. Now, I don't know if it's much of a favor when you end up losing to your biggest rival at WrestleMania, but I guess it counted. Nonetheless, Escobar stepped in, but it didn't help as Andrade was able to hit the La Sombra to win the match. Afterwards, Priest immediately attacked both of their opponents with the Razor's Edge and a South of Heaven chokeslam. But Priest then told both Dom and JD that he didn't need their help, but they needed his. Earlier in the night, JD tried to help Priest by attacking Jey Uso from behind. But Jey ducked JD's attack and then hit Priest with a super kick instead. Looks like we're starting to see even more dissension from all these male members of the Judgment Day. I guess this is what happens when mommy is not around. Our final match on Raw was Shinsuke Nakamura versus Sheamus. Fortunately for all of us, Sheamus came out and tried to put an end to Drew McIntyre's complaining about CM Punk. Unfortunately, the two of them also bickered like two old ladies for a few moments, but at least McIntyre got a good line in about Sheamus eating burger after burger after burger. Now, I have to say, for 99% of us, we'd be happy to look like Sheamus after eating all of those burgers. Oh well, regardless, it hasn't slowed Sheamus down at all yet because he improved to 2-0 when he was able to land a sudden brogue kick on Nakamura to get the win. For Shinsuke, his losses continue to pile up as he is just 1-8 in singles matches in 2024. Let's quickly go beyond the mat on Raw. Sami Zayn was interviewing with Kathy Kelly when Bronson Reed came up behind him. After a brief back and forth, Reed left for a moment, but then immediately came back and attacked Zayn while he was not looking. He then left again, and then returned again, and threw him into some equipment to let him know even more that Zayn needs to worry about bigger things than Chad Gable. Speaking of Gable, he said that Zayn had rubbed in his win in his face when he put the championship right in front of him after the match, and then celebrated with his family at ringside. Gable said that it should be him who was celebrating it ringside at WrestleMania instead of Sami. Gable then dressed down the rest of the Alpha Academy in the middle of the ring, saying that they had all been disappointments, and now their only goal was to get Gable the Intercontinental Championship no matter what. And on SmackDown, we also had several important matches, including two #1 contenders matches. The match of the night was definitely LA Knight versus AJ Styles. Their tensions continued to run hot throughout the entire match, but Knight was still able to be in control for most of the match, including a big suplex from the top rope. Styles eventually took advantage, however, when the ref wasn't looking and poked Knight in the eye, which opened it up for Styles to hit a phenomenal forearm and become the new #1 contender to face Cody Rhodes at Backlash. For Styles, this now gives him 2 straight wins since WrestleMania, and amazingly, his first one-on-one win of 2024. For Knight, even with the loss, he's still 4-2-1 in one-on-one matches this year. The other #1 contenders match was a fatal 4-way for the Tag Team Championships. Now, just as we saw on Raw last week, Triple H and Nick Aldis presented the new titles to A-Town Down Under. Unfortunately, they were not nearly as funny or as grateful as Awesome Truth was. Nonetheless, they're still the new WWE Tag Team Champions. So in this match featured the Street Profits, New Catch Republic, Legado del Fantasma, and the Authors of Pain. Unlike on the Raw side, only 2 teams were legal at a time, but nonetheless, we still found a way to have the action break down with almost everyone fighting at the exact same time. There was a lot of high-flying action in this match, and the highlight was when Montez Ford and both members of the New Catch Republic all jumped off from the corner onto the floor to hit their competitors. In the end, the Street Profits hit a revelation on Angel to become the #1 contender. For the Street Profits, they improved to 2-2 in 2024, a very surprising low number of matches for them. For the New Catch Republic, this is their 2nd straight loss, but they are still in an impressive 8-3 in 2024. For Legado del Fantasma, and specifically Angel and Berto, it's also their 2nd straight loss, and they fell to 2-3 this year. For the Authors of Pain, as a 2-person unit, it again is their 2nd straight loss, and they fell to 2-2. Now, the match of the night very well could have been for the WWE Women's Championship, if not for some interference. Before the match started, we saw all of Damage Control in one luxury suite, and then in the very next suite over, Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill also decided to watch the action and keep an eye on Damage Control. Now, this match was off to a good start, and it was pretty even with both competitors getting a lot of good offense in. And the action really picked up after they exchanged a flurry of punches in the middle of the ring. Eventually, the action rolled to the outside with Bayley delivering a Bayley to belly onto the announce table. But just when it looked like Bayley had gained that upper hand, Tiffany Stratton came out of the crowd and attacked Bayley, causing the match to end. And then Tiffany didn't stop there, and she also attacked Naomi. She got both of them back into the ring and hit the world's prettiest moonsault on both of them at the same time to end the show. Now, Corey Graves noted that this match had been declared a no contest. I personally would have called this a disqualification victory for Bayley since Tiffany attacked her first, but either way, they were both victims of Tiffy's attack. Let's just hope that Naomi stays on top of the contenders list and Tiffy is not first to get a shot at Bayley's title. And in our only other SmackDown match, we saw Carlito take on Santos Escobar. After the break, Elektra distracted the ref, but Zelina swiped her feet off the apron. Elektra then threw Zelina into the barricade, which apparently caused Carlito to lose focus because Escobar quickly ended the match with a Phantom Driver. For Escobar, this was his 3rd straight one-on-one win, and he is now 4-2 in one-on-one matches in 24. Carlito dropped to 1-3 in one-on-one matches since returning. Now, beyond the mat for SmackDown, yet again, it's all bloodline. Sikoa told Paul Heyman that Tama Tonga is his MFT, and I'll be honest, I'm a little worried to find out what MFT stands for. However, he wanted Tonga to take out Kevin Owens for some reason, because those two sides had not really had any interaction for quite some time. Eventually, however, Owens was found as Tonga threw a bloodied Owens onto the ramp and then eventually into the ring. Owens tried to fight back, but Sikoa and Tonga both continued to beat on him until Aldis finally got in Tonga's way, and Sikoa agreed to tell Tonga to back off. After a commercial break, Aldis then showed Heyman that Tonga had rammed his car into Owens, saying that there will be consequences if they do that again next week during the WWE draft. And I've got to say, Mr. Aldis, what are you thinking? We already should have seen these Bloodline members suspended, so you wouldn't have to worry about the draft next week. So there's our news of the week. Let's go to everyone's favorite segment, What Were You Thinking? On this week's What Were You Thinking, we asked Nia Jax, what were you thinking when you did not eliminate Becky or Liv? This week, yet again, we're using the blue pillow to play the role of Becky Lynch, and we're using the plain pillow to play the role of Liv Morgan. So, we're down to the final 3 in this week's Battle Royal Championship match. And Nia is going for her first championship in a couple of years, so Nia, let's just get somebody out as soon as you can. So here's the scene. We've got both Liv and Becky attempting to suplex Nia, but Nia is able to brush it off once and then stop them a second time before she goes and powers both of them up herself. At this point, Nia sits up with that devilish grin of hers, looks around, she gets up, she sees both of the women laying lifeless on the mat. She picks up, grabs Becky Lynch's hand, drags her all the way from the back of the ring, all the way to the middle, where she also finds Liv, and grabs her arm as well. Now, instead of doing the smart thing and finding Becky in the back here, picking her up and tossing her out of the ring, she instead takes both of their arms from the middle of the ring and takes them all the way to the front corner, where she lines them up for the Annihilator. She gets up onto the middle rope ever so slowly, and as she looks and smiles at the camera, all of a sudden both women come up and knock her down from behind. At this point, Nia gets hit on the apron, turns around, and there's Liv hitting her with the double knees. And then Becky, she comes flying off the top rope, and boom! Nia is down off the apron, rolls out, and she is eliminated. So for that, we have to ask Nia Jax, what were you thinking? And now for our first installment of our new segment, Attitude Adjustments. So as we talked about earlier, Chad Gable dressed down all 3 members of the Alpha Academy. Now, I personally disagree with Chad Gable when he said that Sami Zayn rubbed it in his face when he celebrated after his Intercontinental Championship win last week. But Gable may be onto something. Notably, that all of the Alpha Academy needs an attitude adjustment. Gable may need to look at the mirror first before he says anything about the rest of the Alpha Academy, because he is just 1-7 in singles matches, starting with his loss to Gunther for the IC title back on September 4th. And counting tag matches, he is just 3-10 in all matches. Now let's take a quick look back. The Alpha Academy formed on December 11th, 2020. And he and Otis, as a tag team, have won 56-day reign as tag team champions that they won way back in January of 2022, taking down RK Bro. However, that same team was the one who also defeated them just 56 days later. For Otis, his #1 guy, he hasn't won a singles match in a year and a half. His last singles win was a one-on-one victory over Elias on November 7th, 2022. And he is 0-12 since then. And in tag matches, with just he and Gable, he was 1-10 in 2023. And his only win of the year was way back in May of 2023. He's also 0-2 with Tozawa as his partner. He somehow did manage to go 2-1 in 3+ person tag team matches, with one win coming with Ciampa as the third partner, and another win when Maxine was the partner as a mixed tag team match. Tozawa joined the group back on October 23rd, 2023. He is only 1-4 in singles matches, and he is 0-1 in a mixed tag team with Maxine. Now granted, Tozawa may be the smallest guy on the entire Raw roster, so it may not be reasonable to think we could ever really turn it around with him, but nonetheless, the results have not been very good. For Maxine, however, even though she's a very green wrestler, since joining the Alpha Academy on May 15th, 2023, she's actually a fairly respectable 3-9 in all matches, which I would say may be the best of all 4 Alpha Academy members. She's 1-5 in singles matches, and she's 1-3 with Ivy Nile as her tag team partner. And as noted above, she's 1-1 in mixed tag team matches. Now I will have to say, maybe Gable was right to think that the team needs to focus on just one thing. However, maybe he's just a terrible teacher. He can't even win matches himself. How is he ever going to get Otis, Tozawa, and Maxine up to a championship level yet again? Now maybe if he's training with Sami Zayn, who's right at the cusp of a championship, he can get Sami over the top like he did against Gunther at WrestleMania. So maybe that's what Gable needs to do instead. However, he's going to force all 3 members to focus on one thing, and that is to get Gable a championship. Can they pull it off? I don't know. I'm pretty skeptical about it, but time will tell. Until then, sheesh, please. And that's this week's installment of Attitude Adjustments. So let's go to the OK question of the week. Sports Zoo, take it from here. Doc, here's your OK question of the week. That Battle Royal was a lot of fun. I think we should have more championship matches like that. Don't you agree? Are you kidding me, Sports Zoo? How unfair was that match? Only 5 of the 14 competitors in that match have even one singles win in all of 2024. And only Becky and Nia have more than one. I mean, professional wrestling is a competitive sport. We can't be handing out these very important title opportunities to people that don't deserve them. They need to earn their way to be able to compete in them. But no, we had every single woman on the Raw roster battling for this championship. At least WWE had the good sense to have 17 years in between now and the last time that a Battle Royal crowned a championship, which happened to be on a Smackdown where the Great Khali flipped 2 legends, Batista and Kane, to the floor at the same time to become the World Heavyweight Champion. Here, Becky and Nia were so far ahead of the other competitors that they really deserved a one-on-one match for the title. It's a good thing that the man came around once more to win her 7th main roster championship. Regardless, it was still very frustrating that she had to get through 13 other competitors to finally hold that championship yet again. So with that, let's end with our STFs. And here are our STFs for SmackDown. First, we did see Elektra and Zelina briefly fight during a match. However, neither of them interfered with the competitors, so no fine for either of them. Tiffy decided it was Tiffy time when she ended the night breaking up the championship match between Bayley and Naomi and then attacking both of them and hitting a world's prettiest moonsault to end the show. Unfortunately, because it broke up a championship match, we're going to have to give Tiffy a 1-week suspension. But the biggest incident of the night was between the Bloodline and Kevin Owens. Now, we don't even know what happened to Owens when he was thrown out onto the stage, already a bloody mess. But one thing we can be certain of, it was definitely Tama Tonga. Now, Sikoa, for his part, threw Owens into the steel steps and then landed a Samoan spike. Tonga continued to beat down Owens in the ring and even punched and pushed 2 different security guards. We also saw, after the break, Nick Aldis showed Paul Heyman that Tama Tonga had slammed his car into Kevin Owens' car in the parking lot. Therefore, for his role, we're going to have to give Tama Tonga an entire month's suspension. So with Sikoa, he's going to get a 1-week suspension. And even Paul Heyman, for his lack of control over the Bloodline, he's going to get a fine. And on the Raw side, well, let's just start with the Judgment Day because we know they're going to have something. Early in the night, we saw JD McDonough attempt to hit Jey Uso from behind. Fortunately, Jey ducked it, and then Jey super kicked Priest instead of JD. However, since JD was the attacker, he's going to get a fine. Later in the night, during the tag match, Dom swiped Ricochet's leg out from under him, which allowed McDonough to hit a jumping knee and knock Ricochet out of the ring. For Dom, yet again, another fine. And then after the match, because Priest had to get into the act, he attacked both Andrade and Ricochet with a Razor's Edge and a South of Heaven chokeslam, and for those efforts, he will also get a fine. So we've got a fine for all 3 members of the Judgment Day that were there on Raw. Bronson Reed talked to Sami Zayn and then attacked him not once, but then left and attacked him a second time. For his efforts, he's going to get a 1-week suspension. But the biggest penalty of the night will go to Ludwig Kaiser, who brutally turned and attacked his tag team partner, Vinci. And he left by drop kicking Vinci's head into the steel steps. So it looks like that is the end of those 2 as a tag team. And when Kaiser left the ring, Gunther smiled and laughed in approval at Kaiser's actions. So we'll have to give Kaiser a 2-week suspension, and on top of it, we will give Gunther a fine. One women's title match was ruined by Tiffy time, but the other was saved by a well-deserved victory by the man. And it looks like we have all of our number 1 contenders set for a dubiously named Backlash PLE. I'm Dr. O'Kay, reporting on the WWE, where everything is okay.